Hi, welcome everybody to the first APAC Community Call 2023. Today we actually have quite a bit of an agenda, and we have some folks that are here from the America side. That's 10 p.m. at night. They are very committed to us. So I see folks from pretty much all of our different chapters here, so thank you. If you can go to the next slide. Our agenda today is really going to talk a little bit about what some of the direction initiatives coming from the Global OHDSI are, and then a bit of a recap of what our missions and our goals were in 2022, right? And whether or not we accomplished all of those, and looking forward into what 2023 is going to bring, along with some of the other stuff that we want to either make some minor changes to or actually introduce in 2023, such as, the restructuring of the community calls, so an APAC scientific forum that we want to create, and as well as the announcement of the OHDSI 2023 OHDSI APAC Symposium. So I'm glad that Patrick and Mark are here, because if I mess up on the future direction of OHDSI Global, they can correct me. Okay. So if you can go to the next slide, OHDSI, we've established ourselves quite a bit, and we've been doing a lot of evidence, right? A lot of different type of evidence studies and collections and research. But underneath there, it requires us to have a very strong foundation in order for us to continue to grow, and in order for others to really truly adopt what we have going here in OHDSI. And what some of our fundamental pillars are really around the standardized vocabulary, our standardized open source tools, and our standardized data network. So OHDSI actually are going to put in 3 initiatives starting this year, to really focus on helping ground those fundamental pillars down a bit more. I know you guys all have heard of, or have maybe talked about, hey, this doesn't really work with the vocabulary. Who's out there in the network? And what are all the different open sources and tools that we have that we can utilize? And how do we get a hold of all of that, right? So it feels like sometimes it's a mystery. It's this big mystery out there that nobody knows about. So we want to spend a bit more time actually grounding some of those fundamental pillars. So there's 3 initiatives that are being kicked off. If you can go to the next slide. The first one is really around standardized vocabulary, right? And what this is really increasing the opportunity for us to provide more transparency and maturity with the vocabulary development and evaluation process. I'm sure you guys have questioned or have heard people question, how do I trust the vocabulary? Is it really trustworthy? Did somebody check that the ICD codes really properly map to the SNOMED codes? Or how many of them don't really map, and does it matter to us, right? And how does the whole process work? It's like this little magic black box that you go into, and then every month or so you go to Athena and you update the latest and greatest. It's like, wow, cool, magic happens. But we want to be able to provide more transparency around that, right? So you can see here what they're proposing is really conducting a landscape assessment to better understand some of the community needs, developing code of conduct and developer guidelines. They want to disseminate vocabulary process and user documentation and roadmap, and so on and so on. I won't read all this, but basically it's a pillar that they are starting to work on and focus in, executed by Christian and Anna. So if you have an interest in that, be on the lookout for potential opening of meetings that they're going to be announcing. Okay. If we move to the second pillar, the other question, everybody. Yes, go ahead.
Louis, if I just add,
yes,
so
you may.
Next week on the community call, Anna will be talking a little bit more about this vocabulary initiative. But the main thing that's going to happen is that landscape assessment. We're going to be opening a survey, and it's really, really important that we get input from everybody in the APAC community, because we're going to be using the input that we get from the survey to prioritize which vocabularies we'll work on which mappings are prioritized and which things that we deprioritize. So it's essential that we hear from all data partners about what's important to you and what the challenges are so that we can prioritize the vocabulary effort. So Anna will talk about this on next Tuesday's community call, but you'll also see a forum post come out on Tuesday with a request for people to fill out a survey to tell us your experience with the vocabulary. And it's super important that we get input from APAC, because we don't want to be in a situation where we prioritize vocabularies from other parts of the world simply because we didn't get appropriate input from the APAC community. So please be on the lookout for that, and we really request that you do contribute to tell us about your own experiences in the APAC region.
Thank you, Patrick, for giving us that bit of very important information. So repeat what Patrick said. Look out for the community call next Tuesday and look out for the forums, okay? It is extremely important that we in APAC actually provide our feedback to it to ensure that what we want to do is actually covered in the scope of what that first pillar is doing, okay? Now, the second pillar here is around standardizing our data network. So you've seen in the books, you've seen in our journey past that there's lots and lots of different type of partnerships out there, right? We have lots of people. Many of you guys also have data in OMOP. I know we've had efforts in the past where they've asked us for, who we are, what our data source is, and where we are. Well, we want to make that a lot more transparent and a lot more mature. So we're proposing creating a network catalog that will encourage folks to be able to participate and then have an interest in network studies. We also, as part of that, want to promote data quality practices, right? There is the data quality framework as well as other type of data quality standardization we can implement within our network. So that's what we want to create. Patrick, do you know what the next steps are for this one? I don't think we've moved that far yet with this one.
Yeah, so Claire Blacketer will be talking about this also next Tuesday. The work group that will be leading this will be the Data Network Quality Work Group that Claire leads. The immediate next steps is for us to agree as a community about what information we want to share between each of the data partners and create a tool that allows to generate aggregated summary statistics without sharing patient-level data, and then to create an interface that allows for the exploration of that using data diagnostics and probably some additional browsing tools. The interesting thing here that I want to emphasize for the APAC community is we've actually already heard from two regulatory authorities that there's a real interest in using the OHDSI data catalog as a mechanism of helping determine which databases are fit for use for specific regulatory questions. And as it relates to APAC specifically, I'll provide the example from my vantage point. The FDA really wants to have an international data catalog, because very oftentimes, even though we're approving a product for the US, there's a need to understand how a product works across the world. And it's often the case that, but it's not exclusively the case, that US may be the first market to approve something. But when we're monitoring products, we want to be able to know all the places in the world where the product is being used. And so FDA, as one of the regulators, has already expressed interest in using OHDSI's catalog, assuming that we can pull together data sources from North America, Europe, and the Asia Pacific region together into one shared community resource that would then actually be used to encourage international research, where, just as a hypothetical, some industry sponsor goes to the FDA and says, I'm going to do my study of my product using the IQVIA Pharmetrics data set. And what the FDA may respond with is, that's great, IQVIA Pharmetrics is a good data set, but are you aware that these other databases around the OHDSI community are also fit for use for your particular question? And so we may encourage you to consider also pulling in a European data set and a Asia Pacific region data set. And so I think this is a really exciting opportunity for OHDSI, because if regulators start to recommend data sources, this isn't just a great business opportunity for IQVIA and data vendors that are selling data, but it's also a great opportunity to forge collaborations between academic medical centers and industry sponsors in a way that could be very useful to generate regulatory evidence. So Claire Blackadder's work group will be the one responsible for developing this tool, and we should have some announcements relatively soon thereafter about how regulatory authorities are formally participating in this effort. But it's my ambition that this year we create a catalog that enables data diagnostics across as many data partners in the OHDSI community as possible, not with any expectation that requires that you necessarily participate in that work study, but rather to facilitate connections and collaborations that otherwise wouldn't happen if somebody in the US was not aware of some data set in the APAC region. This could actually forge potential connections and collaborations that you all will be able to take advantage of if it's aligned with your own business and academic interests.
Thank you, Patrick, for the color. Now, before we move on to the third pillar, I want to give a chance if anybody has questions, because we've gone through a lot with the first two. Any questions from anyone? Are you guys good? I take smiley faces as we're good. All right, if we can move on to the third one. The third pillar is around standardizing our open source tools. Again, the opportunity here is to increase the adoption and ease of use of Hades packages and other, open source analytic tools. Again, there's a lot of them out there. Sometimes, especially on the Asia Pacific side, we really don't know which one to use, which one is what, where is the latest and greatest, right? So this allows, this pillar and the initiative here will allow for a lot of that to happen. Now, there are actually quite a few different sub-initiatives here, and they're being led by different folks because of the amount of actual support this one will require. So Patrick, are they going to talk about this also as well next Tuesday?
Yes, I'm going to talk briefly about it next Tuesday, but just to kind of summarize the big ticket item here, the one thing we want to establish in the community is that any database platform that we intend to claim that we're actually legitimately supporting, we want to make sure that we have two things in place. One is that there is some availability of a test environment so that developers have the ability to test and develop against a platform to make sure it works. And then the second thing is that we want to have a platform user group, which is going to be individuals who use the same platform to be able to collaborate, such that if if Chan's working off of a Redshift instance and he's got some problem, he can specifically talk to others who are similarly using Redshift and can talk about the problems and prioritize development opportunities for the team. The current situation we're in is challenging in that, Mark, as the co-lead of Hades, has to try to develop software to work across a lot of different platforms, despite the fact that Mark doesn't even have access to the platforms that he's claiming to support. So we need to make that more appropriate. So with the ask specifically for the APAC community is for anybody who is a data partner, we want to make sure that you participate on the platform user group, which is simply just to say, if someone says, who uses Postgres, and if you're a Postgres user, raise your hand and join that group so that we know who is a user. And for each platform, we need to make sure that we identify a platform champion and have an available test instance. So I don't expect this is the case, but if it were the case, that there is some platform that is exclusively being used in the APAC region. I'm going to make something up, but like if you guys are all the ones that are using ㍍and nobody else is using ㍍except for you guys, then it's going to be important that APAC takes a leading role in running the platform user group and making sure that that environment is available for testing for the entire Hades development community. I don't expect there's a specific platform that APAC has to take on, but I would ask that all of you who are data partners on this call, please make sure to join the platform user group that's appropriate to you, because it's really important for us that we know who's using which platform so that we can support them most appropriately.
Thank you, Patrick. So that kind of summarizes the three different fundamental initiatives that OHDSI is starting. So like Patrick says, you'll hear a lot more about it next week, but be on the lookout. Make sure you participate on the Asia Pacific side, because it is important for us to be able to be heard, right? So with that said, if we can go to the recap of what we accomplished, or what we tried to accomplish last year, right? So our first goal last year was really building research expertise and collaboration amongst the different chapters through studies. And we, as a core group, started these 4 studies. Now, if I had to grade ourselves, I probably would give ourselves a C on this. We did start it, but we didn't exactly push this as far as we would like to. And we found, after discussing it amongst the leaders, some of the impediments that we ran into. And I'll talk a bit more about those impediments in a bit and how we are going to change it so that we do accomplish these this year, right? If you can move to our second goal. Now, the second goal is really trying to develop and maintain a communication channel to bring more awareness to Asia Pacific. Now, on this one, on the reverse, if I had to grade it, I would give ourselves an A+, because we did actually do a lot last year focusing around this, right? We started a quarterly newsletter that really communicated what was going around Asia Pacific. We started the biweekly calls and continued them, even though sometimes it was a little hard to find the right topics to talk about. We held our first in-person OHDSI APAC Symposium in Taiwan, and that was, an amazing effort by the Taiwan team as well as the OHDSI APAC leads. And we started to create the membership program to bridge the gap between the global and the APAC, but that kind of got a little hung up with the studies as well. But again, overall, I think we did pretty well when it comes to this particular goal here. So if we go to think about what are we going to do in 2023 that's different, that might help us bridge some of those gaps and deal with some of those impediments that we talked about that we couldn't accomplish in 2022, right? And one of them is really almost, very similar to that first goal. It's really building the research expertise and collaboration amongst the different chapters through publications. Now, again, we ran into impediments last year, and one of the impediments that we believe attributed to us not being able to be as successful as we want last year was the number of meetings that we had, because we had the biweekly calls, the leadership had their own monthly calls, and then we had 4 studies. Each one had a biweekly call. So that's like a total of 10 different meetings on top of the fact that everybody has a day-to-day job, right? So that made it very hard for a lot of us to participate in the studies and to help push them. So what we want to be able to do is actually create a scientific forum where the researchers can collaborate by February. And what that means is actually we're going to create it's almost like a working group that's going to meet on a monthly basis. And that's where the 4 studies are going to be really talked about. It's at the same time as the community call. And you're going to probably ask me what the heck is going to happen in the community call, but we'll talk about it in a second. But this one's going to start on February 2nd. And our goal really is to push out finish the 4 studies and try to publish those by the end of the year. Okay. Now, if we go to our second goal, I will cover the scientific forum in a bit as well. And our second goal, what we want to be able to do, again, really to help Asia Pacific be better at OHDSI and at OMOP, right? We want to move towards creating an APAC training program to help expand the reach to the general community. Now, what that program is going to look like, we don't know. That's why our first milestone is actually determining the appropriate structure and format of this training program. Now, we would love people's input on what they think is the right training program. So there's going to be a group that's going to focus on understanding all the different training programs that are out there, like the Eden Academy, right? Like what's going on at Northeastern, like others that may be similar in other societies, and figure out how we can potentially within Asia Pacific structure that something that makes sense for us. Okay. And while we're doing that, the other thing that we are going to try to do is actually host 6 different training sessions throughout the year. This is above and beyond the training program, trying to create that training program, right? We want to start the training. So before we even have a training program, we want to spend more time training folks throughout the year, okay? And of course, as we create that training program and figure out what it is, we're going to have to develop it and try to implement it with a curriculum and figure out all the logistics by Q3, okay? And launch the actual program in Q4, or at least a POC of it in Q4. This might seem like it's a year-long process and maybe not as aggressive as we want it to be. However, I think it's appropriate given the amount of stuff that we have to deal with and the number of chapters we want to work with to ensure that we cover everyone's need, right? Or the majority of the need, and prioritize those properly. So anybody have any questions on our 2 goals? Actually, there's a third one, I think. There's a third goal, right? Yeah, there is a third goal. And what that is actually, we actually borrowed this. I won't say we stole this. We borrowed this from the Global Steering Committee as well. So, which is creating a collaboration activities that will encourage collaboration, right? This kind of folds a little bit into the previous one kind of folds into this, but really a couple of our milestones is the Asia Pacific Symposium that's going to happen in July, and I will not ruin anybody's surprise. I will leave that for a little bit. But also trying to distribute our quarterly newsletters and host our monthly community calls. And our monthly community calls, we're going to try to encourage them and change them to be a little bit more collaborative. And that's what you're going to hear about in a bit. So if you can move to the next one. Can't remember that this is the community call restructure. So what does that mean? We're going to restructure them, and we're trying to combine a bunch of our goals into one, right? So you saw in our second goal was about the training sessions, and then our third goal is getting people more involved and creating an environment where folks can all collaborate. So, well, the feedback that we got is the APAC community calls are great, but it's better if we can make training sessions out of them. People are a lot more proactive and wants to learn more. So what we have here is we're scheduling different training sessions that will be hosted by the different chapters. The schedule, as you can see, is this, but what the agenda is and what the topics are have not been determined yet. But we will have one before the 16th of February. Okay. And you can see our community call actually has been changed to monthly now instead of bi-weekly. And that is because we want to make room, if you can go to the next slide, for our research forum. Okay. So this is going to be hosted every Thursday, the first Thursday of every month. And the purpose is really to build collaboration amongst the researchers for the 4 ongoing studies, right? Because we feel that there are some overlap, right? Our first call is going to be February 2nd at the normal community call time, basically now. And our first agenda is really to discuss the overlap amongst the 4 studies and how do we make individual efforts into a group effort to move all 4 of them forward. Okay, so you should see a meeting invite already that's been sent out, if not, to be coming soon for this scientific forum as well. It is going to replace one of our community calls. So it's you have a community call, then research forum, community call, research forum. So it's still bi-weekly, but we just we changed it to we changed the purpose of these calls to try to create more collaboration. Okay, which goes towards our 3rd goal. All right. So with that, any questions? Because I can talk forever. Okay, if we can go to the next slide. All right, I will not steal Nicole's thunder. Nicole, I'm going to hand this over to you.
All right, thanks, Marie. So as Marie mentioned, one of our big goals every year is to host a symposium across the APAC region. So last year was our first time we did that face-to-face. The previous 2 years we did that online through a virtual system. This year we're going to host the APAC Symposium in Sydney in July, so July 13th and 14th. Why we're doing that is because there is the MedInfo conference that will be on in July, the 4 days before that. So we're hoping that lots of people will come to Australia for that reason and also come to our APAC Symposium. So the details are obviously still in train. We're meeting, about all of the logistics and so on, but put in your calendars July 13th and 14th in Sydney at the University of New South Wales campus, which conveniently is very close to Bondi and the great beaches in Sydney. So it's a beautiful spot to be. So you should all come along. If not for the science, come for the beaches, although it will be winter. So, that's unfortunate. But anyway, we will be distributing information very soon about abstracts and the details around closing dates and so on. We are thinking of having the symposium on the first day and then some tutorials on the second day. Likely that will be 2 streams, a overview stream. We've done this previously last year in Taiwan, which gives you a really nice, sample of everything that the OHDSI collaboration can do, from CDM all the way to generating evidence and so on. And we may also do a more focused group around, actually generating the evidence around a particular topic. So details are still being finalised, but hopefully there'll be something for everyone at different levels of expertise. So I think that's all I needed to say, Mui. Just please keep an eye out, save the dates, have a think about travel and so on. And we would love to see you in Sydney.
Awesome. Thank you, Nicole. Yes, please save the dates. Like Nicole says, we will be sending out information about abstracts soon, and registrations and details of all that soon. Okay. So with that, I believe
and I can
that's
say
all.
that
Yes.
I didn't think anybody could be more excited about Nicole hosting OHDSI APAC than me, but literally every day, my wife Holly and my daughters Catherine has asked me, when are we going to Australia? So I can say that Holly and Catherine are the most excited for OHDSI APAC, but I come in a close third.
And I should also say that Patrick and I are scheming a bit of a surprise. So keep an eye out for that too. You won't find out till the symposium, but there's some scheming happening.
Yes, and some of that scheming might be other type of scheming might be embarrassing people, so it might be a good thing for you guys to come and see how some of the folks might be embarrassing themselves. Different from the call scheming, from what I understand. So multiple surprises waiting at the symposium.
Correct.
So save
Gu-
those dates.
Guys, you've ruined the surprise by saying it's a surprise. Come on.
Oh, no, you're going to get people to come because they're so interested to find out.
Right. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be the talk of the community, you know, and you want to be there when it happens so that you can say, oh, yes, I was there for that.
Oh, Nicole, you forgot actually a very important information. So you said winter in Australia. How cold is winter in Australia?
Well, is somebody online from Sydney? I'm in Adelaide, so it's always a lot colder in Adelaide than Sydney.
I am from Sydney. Yeah. Blanca, how are you?
Oh yeah, Blanca, you're online. What do you
With
think?
climate
July?
change, we don't know anymore what the weather will be. We've been having pretty cold summer for this year and last year. But I love winter in Sydney. It's because it's sunny and tends to be drier than the summer, but still not cold. But if you want to enjoy water, which is the most beautiful part of Australia, in my opinion, you may want to go up north, visit up north, go to the Barrier Reef, have a couple of trips, Northern Territory, Queensland, and then come back to Sydney.
Sounds like a
Define
plan.
cold. Like how many degrees Celsius?
In winter, I think generally you would find 15 degrees, so not very cold. And then if it's a sunny day, then you can even go out without a jacket or anything outside in the day, and then it becomes a bit cooler over the evening. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Nice.
Sydney is a beautiful place in winter. I really like it.
It is.
Okay, that's nice. That's not cold.
No, it's not cold.
Cool. Well, that's basically what we had to kick off APAC 2023. Does anybody have any questions, any type of comments that they want to make? Excited about any of the stuff we're doing? Am I the only crazy one? Maybe.
Murray, can I just say also with
Yes.
what did we call it? Scientific forum?
Yes, the scientific forum.
Yeah. Please feel free to join up if you're not already involved in one of the studies. This is open to everybody who's interested. So don't feel like you can't join if you haven't already joined one of the 4 studies previously. It's open. We'd love to have you on board. So feel free to come along. There's, it's not a membership, it's open. So yeah, please feel free to join up.
And the other thing I have to say is if you may be new to OHDSI or don't understand how to really do research and you're afraid you may not be able to contribute, I still say you should come because there are multiple ways to contribute in those forum. And it's a great way to learn from others how things are being done. And I can tell you many of the folks that are in that forum also are new. So you won't be the only new one that's there. Lots of folks are learning as well. I see some of our folks that are from the Hong Kong University online as well. They're new. So they're learning as well as we go through this whole process. So please don't shy away from joining us or thinking that because you're new, you don't know much about OHDSI. But that's the whole purpose of these forums, right? As well as our community calls and how we've changed them. If you actually also have training topics that you might be interested in to see during those 7 sessions, let us know as well. So send it to the OHDSI Asia Pacific email address that you guys see the quarterly releases from, right? Send it to that email address and we can collect those and try to make sure that we cover some of the topic that really the community is interested in, besides what we pick, right?
Yeah, so just to add to that, Mui and Nicole, the invitations have been sent out to everybody on APAC team. So like it didn't specify anybody who's on the teams can join the call. So like as Mui and Nicole said, it's not a closed meeting, it's an open meeting. Please join us and let's drive the studies forward. I'm not saying it wasn't driven forward, right? It's like no implications there.
Concentrating
That's
our
right.
efforts. We're just concentrating our efforts now.
Right,
That's
right.
all.
There you go. Thanks for nicely packaging that. Yeah, I'll stop talking. Yeah.
Anyone got any other feedback or comment that they would like to add?
Well, if I could just add 2 of the global activities that we'll be doing here in the first quarter of the year.
Mhm.
We've deliberately set up to try to be accommodating of all the different time zones. So the first is Phenotype February, which, as the name suggests, during the month of February, we will be focused on trying to engage the entire global community and talking about processes and products we can produce associated with phenotype development evaluation. Our phenotype work group, led by Gautam Rao and Azza Shwebi, will be coordinating that effort. But explicitly, the vast majority of that work, if not all of it, will be happening on the OHDSI forums. And that's deliberate and intentional to support all the different time zones. So it's an asynchronous conversation going on every single day about phenotype activities. So we really want to encourage everyone in the APAC region to read, listen, participate, respond to questions and comments, and engage in that effort. Last year we did this, and what we heard from feedback was a lot of people enjoyed reading things, but not very many people felt empowered to respond or contribute. And we're hoping to make sure that everybody does feel comfortable with having the opportunity to contribute and participate in the discussions, which are almost all of them will be just on the OHDSI forums. The second thing that we'll be doing in the global community is, I guess properly kicking off in March, but it'll be April or May timeframe, is we will be running one global network study as a community that we want to run through, where each week we will do one specific task of doing a network study. And I listed out kind of the itinerary of tasks that need to be done, so that together as a community, we'll be trying to do one study. So 2 asks of this call is, if anybody has a research question where you'd really like to be leading a global network study, we're going to be opening up a survey to say, just tell us your question, and we will be picking one for the whole community to work through. And then the second ask is that regardless of what question that is asked, we want participants to engage in that process, whether it be as a data partner to run steps of the process, or simply those that want to contribute to the design of the study, the interpretation of the results, the writing of the manuscript. And so I encourage you all to participate in that. And we deliberately are trying to do that also asynchronously, so that it's not just within East Coast time zones of when things happen, but rather creating a continuous process for anybody to contribute at any time of the day to each of the steps as we work them through week by week. And so I hope that folks in the APAC community will join those activities. Even if you can't come to the global call, you should be able to actively participate in each of those steps each day along the way.
So to add a bit more to what Patrick talked about, the first activity, which is Phenotype February, what you see on my screen is, if you go to the forums and type in Phenotype February, this is the effort that went on last year, right? And you can look at what folks did. Basically, they did a phenotype per day. Now, I'm not saying this is exactly what Patrick and team or the OHDSI community is going to repeat again this year, but just to give you an understanding of some of the activities that goes on, right? So if you can do this yourself, just search Phenotype February, you'll see the welcome to phenotype. And then every day there was a phenotype development that went on. It happened in the forum. Folks posted the clinical description, posted a lot of information, how they developed the phenotype, and then folks were able to, other collaborators were actually able to comment on what was done up here. to continue to, you know, keep this going and actually exploring whether or not these phenotypes were properly defined. So it's going to be a very similar, it's going to be an effort similar to this. It may not be this one by exactly the way it was run last year, but just so you guys, if you are interested in even understanding what happened, right, you can go out there and look at it. All you have to do is go to the forums under OHDSI and type phenotype February, and you'll find pretty much all of them because they start with the word phenotype February. All righty, thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, and finally, as a bit of motivation, the last time our community came together on a global scale to run a network study, it was led by a researcher from APAC. So let's get those ideas in so that APAC is 2 for 2 in leading these global network studies.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you, Mark, for that comment as well. Anyone got any other comment or feedback that they would like to express here? All righty. Well, if we don't with that, thank you everybody for joining our first community call. We look forward to the amount of fun that we're going to have and then the amount of collaboration we're going to have in 2023. Again, we've restructured a lot of things, so hopefully this will help folks in Asia Pacific gain more understanding of what OHDSI and OMOP is all about. And we really, really would love to get your participation in more of the activities that we are planning this year, both globally and within Asia Pacific. So thank you very much, everybody. With that, we shall see you guys either in the research forum or next month for the first training. All right. Thank you. Bye.
Hi, everybody.